Core Load, the most effective glucose disposal agent on the market. What does that mean? It means it's gonna help drive carbs to muscle cells and prevent carbs from going into fat cells. It's perfect to combat a cheat meal with a ton of carbs. It's perfect to help you get a sick pump before your workout. Just incorporate Core Load with a carb meal about an hour before you train, and the food pumps are ridiculous. Also, if you're a competitor, Core Load for pump ups and filling out your glycogen is crucial. Core Load, get yourself some.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Pro Physique Code. It is February 20th, 2024. We are days away from the Command the Stage, so I have bad news for you. If you're listening to this podcast, you missed it. Either that or you were there and you're listening after. So we'll do a little review of how the Command the Stage goes, but I'm really, really excited for the first kind of like community event that we're going to have Thursday night, Friday and Saturday, and maybe a little bit Sunday morning. So it'll be a nice weekend. Then we go to the Arnold. But how you guys doing?
Doing
Good, man. How about yourself? Busy?
Yeah. You know, I think whenever you have a lot of events like this coming up, there's a lot of stress leading up to them. But now that everything's finalized, our transformation challenge is kicked off, our largest one ever. I mean, we're approaching 3,000 people in that damn thing, and we've never been near that number. So that tells me you're doing the right things to grow that. And I love that community because we're helping people, you know, understand how to manipulate the physique that they want, how to be healthier. It doesn't have to be so complicated. There's a lot of motivation in there, a lot of great people. So that got me excited. And then, you know, the Command the Stage is finalized. You know, the locations, the people that are coming, the weekend, the dinners are set. We're doing a dinner Thursday night, like a meet and greet. So it's just like I get the tingles thinking about seeing everybody, right? It's fun.
Yeah, I know. I get that way too. It's kind of that I say anxiety, but it's not bad anxiety. You know, it's just like the night before, like you get so anxious and excited just because you can't wait for it to be
I
here.
woke up today, just so you guys know, I woke up today at 3:30 in the morning and could not go back to sleep. So I just said, screw it. I got up, I wrote some plans, did some cardio. And so like, but it's like, I started thinking about stuff for the weekend that I like, you know, need to do. And I'm like, okay, just roll with it. But yeah, that anxiety, it can be a good thing if you don't fight it.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
feel like everything's kind of like a ramp up, right? So we have like this event, and then it's into the Arnold, and then it's into the class shows, and then it's like everything kind of gets into full swing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I was just thinking the other day because I feel like the Arnold truly is kind of the signify, like it kind of just starts the season in a way. And I was just thinking the other day, I'm like, gosh, I feel like it was Christmas the other day, and then we always say like January, February is kind of that dry period for shows, but they're getting ready to start again, and it's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. And Kalia, she just won the overall at the NPC Legends Classic in Vegas last weekend. So she's doing the Arnold. That was our warm up because the Arnold, you have to qualify now. So she wasn't qualified. She hasn't competed in 3 years. And I didn't even realize she's never won an overall before. So she's all excited because she won that overall. So both of my girls going that have competed this year both won overall. So we'll have some good girls at the show Friday. So the Arnold's going to be a lot of fun. I've really learned to enjoy the Arnold. I think the first couple of years I used to get like kind of overwhelmed by it. But I've learned to just kind of, I still find time to go to the gym. I still find time to see everybody. But I used to just feel overwhelmed by it. And now I'm actually like looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I'm so excited as well. I've never had as many clients as I'm gonna have there, like in one spot. I think I'm like 8 to 10 that are coming, and I'm just excited for that because a lot of them I haven't met before, so that'll be exciting.
Yeah, you got Lexi's got her own little community of little Lexis. I don't know.
Lexis.
That's what we'll call them. Actually, it's really cute because one of them, she's actually coming to Command the Stage this weekend. She's traveling all the way from Oregon, but she had, I don't think she has it anymore, but she used to have like a little Etsy shop where she made apparel. So she made some different designs, and I got them approved, and she made some apparel for some of the girls on my team that just said like Team Lexi, had the Pro Physique logo, so it was cute.
That's
very
awesome.
cool.
Love that stuff. So for today's podcast, last week was the dangerous prep protocols.
No, we
2
did.
weeks
So we
ago.
talked about the vices that hold you back in
Oh, the
prep.
vices, alcohol and drugs. Okay, so for this one, I think we're going to go back to kind of more of a Q&A format, and then we'll jump back into another dangerous prep protocols in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think some of these questions I got were pretty good. And I think, we probably have a lot to say on all of them. And I think these Q&As make for good episodes because there's some topics that we could talk about but aren't really worth like a full episode. So I think that's where the Q&As come in handy. So I guess I'll just start us off. So first question is, okay, making improvements in the off season. Where do you guys feel like people fall short?
Evan loves this topic.
Evan, why don't you start us off with the
I mean,
answer?
again, it all depends on everyone's goals, right? But I think most people fall off on the diet side of things. Um, it's it's important to work in things like free meals and all that stuff. Absolutely. If we're in a structured off season, I think that's really, really important. Um, I think sometimes those can get a little bit out of hand and add a little bit too much body fat on. And as if you're a female competitor, it's more important to try to keep some of those things in check, unfortunately, than it is for male competitors, just because of the way the body works. Females typically hold on to fat a little bit more, or considerably more than guys do, and so it's important to not push it too far the opposite direction. Like, we want to find that balance with it, but if your goal is to get on stage again the next year with it, it's trying to keep that in check while still making sure you feed yourself enough to be able to train hard enough to be able to grow where you need to grow.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it can go that way, but I also think we've all experienced it going the opposite way for some people too, where they're just very afraid to gain weight and necessary weight, right? And they kind of hold on to they're very close to being stage lean. And I think that holds a lot of people back, especially newer competitors who need to grow. I think that is an area that holds people back too. It's just not leaning into that temporary discomfort, right? And just wanting to stay comfortable in that level of leanness that is not sustainable or really not proactive for what you're needing to do. So I think it can go both ways with kind of where people can fall off. But I think it goes more in kind of what you mentioned, Evan, people
Yeah.
falling off a little too hard, like where they want too much balance, right? Like I'm all for a little bit of balance or harmony, as Paul says, in like your off season,
I
but
was like, too much balance. I don't know if that's a thing.
I mean, I think I just yeah, I think some people just take it a little too far, right? Maybe their one intuitive eating day for the week turns into three and then four. And so you have to, yeah, it's there's a sweet spot that you have to find there.
And one more thing I wanted to touch on too with that, like, say, that makes a lot of sense, is I have got a couple questions from really good competitors that have to push the weight up to a part they're a little bit uncomfortable with. They're being very structured with it.
Mhm.
It's not out of hand, and that's what I'm kind of talking about. When you're not structured, it gets out of hand. But if you're structured with it and you start to feel a little bit uncomfortable, I've had a lot of them ask me, it's like, well, like, how long is it before I can stay leaner in an
Yeah.
off season? And like, well, when you have enough muscle. When you have enough muscle,
Yeah.
you can typically keep it a little bit leaner in the off season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being that I only work with competitors at this point, I have found the best method for making the improvement season or the off season or the post show season successful is setting that next goal right away, not leaving it open ended. When you know what you're working towards, it's in the back of your mind every decision you make. Doesn't mean all the decisions have to be perfect, but if you end your season in December and you don't know when you're going to compete again, you can be kind of adrift. You can kind of be unfocused and missing workouts and missing meals. But if we end the season in December and we go, okay, we're gonna compete again in September, that means we've got 9 months. That means we've got, you're 47 weeks out. That makes it very real, right?
Mhm.
And so then you're thinking in terms of like, okay, every day does matter, right? Sometimes it can feel like in bodybuilding, you can be like, it doesn't matter. I don't know when I'm gonna get on stage again. But if you make it matter, I think there's more likelihood that you're gonna get that extra rep. You're gonna go back to the kitchen for that extra protein. You're gonna make good decisions along the way that put you in a position, because anybody can flip the switch in prep, right? anybody that competes knows that that switch is always there, but can you, you know, have a semblance of that approach in your daily routine when you're not in prep? That's the people that come back better year after year after year.
Mhm.
Yep, I totally agree. And actually, another question that it kind of goes along with this that I want to talk about is this person asked tips for reverse dieting, trying to let go of being rigid, but also scared of being too loose. So this kind of goes along with our question, the first question.
I mean, my number one tip for reverse dieting is that don't wait to do it until the season's over. It's very damn near impossible to successfully reverse diet once you take away the competition, right? That mindset of being so detailed with your diet, once you step off stage, I mean, it's just a bite here, a snack there, a one off day here. Before you know it, you're up 8 or 10 pounds. Then you're like, what's the point? Versus, you know, I like to get my competitors up to their almost off-season numbers going into their last show of the season. Then reverse dieting really is more about just making sure you're hitting your numbers. It's not so much about, you know, am I eating enough or do I need to build my calories up? Now, that doesn't always work out, and in which case, yeah. And then it's just a personality thing. You know, I don't try to hold anybody to a standard that they don't want to be held to. I have some clients that are robots. They don't they don't change in prep, off season. They don't change. I don't hold everybody to that standard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that is important for us as coaches to not hold every client to the same standard in that way, because I have some clients in their off season or the reverse diet where they're, like you said, Paul, they're robots. They like to track everything. That's what makes them happy. Whereas some people, they want a little bit more, like they want a free meal every week. They want an intuitive eating day. So it's kind of learning, the client's psyche and what they need. However, I do think it is important for every competitor that, like, kind of that first month post show, you are going to have to realize you're probably going to have to be a little bit more structured and rigid, and almost kind of treating that first month post show in your reverse diet like it was prep. Because I feel like if you can really rein it in that first month in your reverse diet, typically you can kind of avoid that post show rebound, right? So I do think that it's important that first month at least to keep things a little bit more rigid, and then the more consistent you stay out of that, usually the more quote unquote balance you can add in if that's something that you want and something that you and your coach agree on.
Yeah, I say very similar things to this. It's if we can't get people's food up going into a show, which is obviously always the goal, and kind of going back to like how I like to start a lot of preps, people say, well, this is kind of aggressive. I'm like, well, if we're 12 weeks out right now, I want you to think we're more like 8 to 10 weeks out, not the 12 weeks out, because the goal is to be ready early and feed you into the show. Because if you try to crash land into a show, it's hard. And it's not, it's the look's not going to be as good, and the reverse out of it's going to be hard, especially if somebody only wants to do like 1 or 2 shows. Um, but if we have to keep things kind of low and push into shows, I do my best to get this into everyone's head that you can't just automatically flip that switch and get out of the prep mindset almost for the next month. Feel like you're in prep still do everything the way that you were doing it before, just slowly up in the food, and it will make everything so much better. So much better throughout your growing season, your off season, your insulin sensitivity. Everything is better. Your cravings are lower. And I think that's the big thing with it is I know we all experience this, right? Like after shows, everyone's hunger, maybe not right away, but once you start feeding them, it starts to spike up a few weeks after the show. And next thing you know, a month and a half later, their food can be exactly where it is now, but their hunger's way, way down, way, way down. And if you can get past that hurdle, get past that hump, everything gets so much easier. But you have to get over that hump first.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've even run into the case too where I always tell my clients out of a show, the more consistent you stay with hitting your macros, usually the quicker I can get them up, right? Whereas if you're not hitting your macros to begin with, and then you're checking in expecting your coach to bump up your food, well, it's hard to do that if you're not already hitting the macros that are in place, right? So typically, if you can remind yourself, the more consistent you stay, especially in that first month, the quicker your food will get higher, and then the quicker too your hunger hormones will kind of start to level off.
Yeah,
One
I'll
other
often
thing,
ask
sorry.
people like, okay, where would you feel comfortable starting? Like, let's say they are at a low number going out of prep. You know, what's a number that you feel like you can stick to? Because if you If you set a number and they're constantly going over it, now they have guilt for going over. And like you said, Lexi, you don't feel comfortable adding food because you're like, well, if you're going over now, if you go over and I add more, are we going to have a problem? So what's, sometimes I'll say, well, okay, what's a number you think you can stick to? And sometimes they'll be like, listen, I'd be fine on 200 carbs and 50 fat. And you're like, cool, that's your number for the week, right? And then you can see how they respond to that. Sometimes that's all it takes, is just that, they don't feel the guilt of eating a little bit more. So I mean, that's where the coaching comes in, paying attention to the personality. Lexi, you're somebody that I never really feel like has too much desire to be like, oh, I need freedom. I need to go to all you can eat buffet, coach. You've always had very good, process going into and out of a show. And I think when you're coaching someone that doesn't have the same personality as you, that's when you kind of got to check yourself. I'm a little more loose when my season ends, typically. So I have to remind myself, some of my clients want to be a little more rigid than I might want to be, right? So you've got to be able as a coach to kind of separate yourself from your expectations.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
And then
got
do you,
one. Yeah, I got a couple questions here that are pretty good. One of them I thought was a really interesting to think about because I have some experience on both sides of this, and it's not really the most common thing. Um, would you rather have a bikini athlete that's too heavily muscled or under muscled and needs to add muscle?
I like this question. This
Which
is a
is
good, like,
which is
thing.
easier to get to the standard. Now, granted, there's obviously differences in this, right? On this, but which would you prefer?
Do you want to go first, Paul, or do you want me to?
Well, I'm thinking, because I've been on both sides of the equation and both are challenging,
Mhm.
I probably prefer the person that needs to add more muscle, especially if there's someone that kind of already fits more into the category up. I never want an athlete to have to lose muscle. However, if we're talking short-term results, it's always easier to pose down and, if you already have the muscle, it really comes down to the athlete. But I think I enjoy the process of coaching much more when I'm like, okay, we need to eat, we need to grow, we need to build some muscle. Um, I can't really think of too many athletes that I've been like, okay, you got to stop working out. There's been points in Daraja's and Ariana's preps where I've been like, okay, we probably need to back off the shoulders or the glutes a little bit here and there, but they're kind of unicorns. You don't see it too frequently that you're like, hey, we're getting too muscular.
Yeah. I think it's, again, it's different, right? If someone really enjoys training, and they probably do if they're overly muscled with that, it can be a little tough. It can be tough to say, hey,
Don't dodge the
you
question.
just
What do you prefer?
probably, if someone is okay with backing off on training, probably the over muscled,
Okay.
because you can atrophy muscle with training splits. Like if someone has quads are way too dominant, right? But they have good glutes and they have good shoulders. Pretty easy. Let's just remove all the quads from the equation, right? Pick movements that don't activate them almost at all.
It's
Let
funny you
those kind of
mentioned
settle
that. So
down a
I
little
have a
bit.
very good bikini pro in prep right now, and her feedback in the past was too much quads, not enough glutes. And we've, pulled her quads down and brought her glutes up. So yeah, that's a nice, that's, yeah, I see what you're saying there. That's a slight different than the way I was approaching it. I was thinking more of a girl who's, overly muscular all over,
Mhm.
right? But yeah,
Yeah.
if it's just one
And
body part, then it is a little different.
and obviously I haven't coached this person, but I was involved with someone, that had to lose a lot of muscle to be able to fit the bikini division. And it's not the easiest thing to do. Like
Right.
diet has to be a part of it too. You almost have to
Yeah.
starve muscle out, which is a weird way to go about it. Like you have to kind of bring protein down to actually starve the muscle out. And if someone is overly muscled too, you don't realize how hard it is to lose muscle until you've worked with
Yeah.
someone
Right.
trying to lose muscle. You've been with someone trying to lose muscle. It is hard. Like even just something like holding a bar to do RDLs
Even
can
just being
activate your
on the
traps, your
stairs.
shoulders. Yeah.
I've seen girls couldn't lose muscle because they were doing stairs, which you wouldn't think would be hypertrophy. But if you are genetically blessed in a certain body part, any stimulus will grow it.
Yep. Anything. Anything.
Yeah,
But if
I
someone
get
really
it.
likes to train and they're newer to training, I love coaching people that want to grow. I absolutely love it. But they have to know how to train. They have to want to train. They have to understand what failure is and know how to push themselves, which is a whole nother thing that we'll go over in my presentation here in a few days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if you are an athlete and you have to lose muscle, I feel like a lot of times it's more so mentally challenging for that person. I can imagine just having to back off of training, right? Especially if you like training. I mean, can't think of anybody in particular right off the top of my head, but I mean, I've heard of instances of girls deciding just to not compete anymore because they love to train and they want to be able to train hard. But if they do that, they outgrow the bikini criteria. So I think personally for me, it's hard to give a one-way answer for this one because I agree with you guys. I like coaching people who more so need to grow. But in the instance of somebody needing to lose muscle, I think in the short term, there's always little things you could potentially play around with in their posing. I mean, obviously they're going to eventually have to lose muscle, but in the short term, you can try to disguise things a little bit with posing, but I think it's harder mentally for those clients to downsize than it is, from a physical standpoint.
I've had some figure pros that I've coached to the pro bikini stage, right? And so that's a much easier transition than taking somebody who's a novice to competing to a pro card in bikini, right? There, so that's an easier transition. It just comes down to it.
It's definitely quicker.
Yeah. I've actually got a girl right now in prep who is a figure pro. But the standard for bikini has changed and she actually likes the muscularity of the division now and now wants to compete. So
Awesome.
Yeah, that is cool. Awesome. Okay, here's a question, kind of a quicker question. Okay, these two can kind of go together. So this person asks, how many diet sodas or packs of Crystal Light is acceptable on prep or during a cut? And is it okay to chew a lot of gum during a prep or during a cut?
Oof.
I think I think this one is very person dependent because I think that some people are a little bit more sensitive to all the artificial sweeteners that come from those things than others. Personally, for me, I've never been somebody that's had to cut that stuff out completely. However, I also don't feel like I abuse it. So I personally think it's fine to have gum, diet sodas and whatnot, Crystal Light. But I think where it becomes a problem is when you start abusing it and, you're going through multiple packs of gum a day or you're drinking,
now gum
five.
will have some calories, and that's where I've
Mhm.
seen actually people be like, okay, I'm chewing gum all day, and I'm like, well, how many pieces? And they're like 18 pieces, and I'm like, okay, that's probably 30 carbs. Like there is some
Yeah.
sugars in there, even if they're artificial sweeteners. I don't really have a limit on caffeine and things like that based on the person's, like you said, if they're not overdoing it between meals, having a diet soda, towards the end of prep, I probably get upwards of 3 to 4 diet sodas a day, just kind of between my meals or with my meals. I'm a big Mountain Dew. If you guys are, reaching out
Oh,
for
love Diet
sponsors, yeah. So I'm available. Just hit me up
Mountain
on the
Dew
gram.
is fun to call.
Um, so yeah, but what's funny is like the reverse is true. The second I stop dieting and doing all that, I just find my desire for them kind of drops. I think they actually aid in like hunger control for me. A little bit of sweetness to them, So yeah, I don't really have a limit. If they're not noticing negatives, I don't want carbonation the day before the show or the day of the show. That's kind of a limitation, but just replace your caffeine consumption with black coffee, so you don't get headaches. But no, I don't have a problem with.
I feel like, especially for divisions like bikini division, that stuff really doesn't matter as much because you're not trying to get dry and hard and peeled to the bone where you're literally like skin is see-through. Um, I think the person asking this question probably overdoes it because they brought up a bunch of different things: diet sodas, Crystal Light, sugar-free gum. It seems like they're probably on the leaning towards the too much
It's
side.
it's it's a
If I
slippery
had to
slope.
guess,
I
yeah.
had one prep where I used a lot of Walden Farms, and I did notice like I'm not dropping on my normal drops, and then I was like, oh wait, Walden Farms says 0 calories. It's not 0 calories. It's zero
No.
calories per serving, and you're having 16 servings a day, right? So like you can start to get away with little things like the little creamer in your coffee. I was talking to one of my friends last year in prep, and she's like, yeah, I didn't realize it, but I was having creamer in my coffee, and before I knew it, I was having 8 coffees a day.
Mhm.
It's
That
really
adds up.
easy. like, yeah, I feel like
Those-
it's really easy to build on that stuff. Like the little, you know, 0 calorie, 5 calorie things. Like usually the serving size is really small, but those things, it's really easy to build
Yep.
over time, right?
Yep.
That one packet of
Oh, yeah.
Crystal Light turns into 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, right? Like it's really easy to kind of
Yeah.
obsess over those things. Cause I know personally, I used to drink Crystal Light and I have nothing against it in moderation, but I stopped buying it just because I found that I was just relying on it too much. I would drink it and then I wouldn't even want plain water because I was so used to the flavor of it in my water. So I just stopped buying it. And, a couple days it kind of sucked at the beginning, but then eventually it's like, it's fine. So I think if you don't have like if you can't just keep it in moderation with those things, just stop buying them. And I think that, usually that helps.
And I think people with addictive personalities too, those artificial sweeteners absolutely have addictive qualities to them. How many people do you know that are addicted to Diet Coke? That's a real freaking thing.
I
I've
mean,
known
yeah,
many
you
of
get
people.
used to the sweetness, you get used to the bubbles or whatever it is. So yeah, you can
Yeah, and
definitely.
it definitely sends like signals to your brain, right? It doesn't know that it's not sugar, even though your body doesn't process it like that. So it's I mean, your body you're gonna crave it at certain points with it.
Oh, I
And
definitely crave it, but
I,
like between meals, I'll be like, Diet Coke sounds good. Okay, I'm
yeah,
dieting. For me, that's a good idea.
I
So
mean,
like,
and it
yeah,
has its place, right? But like a Diet
yeah,
Coke is one thing, but if it's Diet Coke and then you're not having water, then you're having Crystal Light, and then you're
right.
also having gum with that. That's probably like, okay, that's how about we pick
Yeah,
and choose here and not just throw everything at it? That would probably be my recommendation.
yeah, yeah.
Yep. Yep. Agreed. Agreed. And I think, why a lot of people use those things when they're in a prep or a fat loss phase is it's to kind of kill that, like usually to help with the hunger pangs, or maybe if you're just like really food focused in between meals, you'll add something like that in to help with that. But I also think, and I know Evan, you've talked about this before on podcast or on like previous podcasts, but I think it's important to realize like it is okay to be hungry when you're in a fat loss phase and
Yeah.
or in prep. So if you're always chasing this feeling of fullness, I typically say if you're in a fat loss phase or a prep and you're never not hungry, like or you're never hungry, I don't know if that's necessarily like
I
a
chase the hunger feeling. I mean, there's
Yeah.
definitely points in prep at the end of prep where I'm like, something's wrong. I'm not hungry. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it is important to realize it's okay to be hungry. Like it's not a bad thing. Now, if you're ravenous all day, of course, maybe a diet soda here and there can kind of help to take the edge off, but it's okay to be hungry. I mean,
it
I
shouldn't be, I think Evan's point, my point, your point, it shouldn't be the only fluids you consume are
Yeah.
Crystal Light and
yeah.
caffeinated.
And it shouldn't be the majority of foods you consume.
Right.
Yep.
I don't think so. And one more thing, talking about like no 0 calories. Does everyone remember there's no free rides in life? There's not. Everything's a give and take. I remember there was one prep that everyone's like, mustard, just use mustard. Mustard's
I
a great
knew you were
condiment.
going to
Use
bring this.
mustard. Mustard's awesome. I was getting stuck. It was like 3 years ago going into nationals, and I was just kind of getting stuck at a weight, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And I was like, let me measure my mustard out because it's just 5 calories, right? 5 calories. I was eating 300 calories a day of mustard. People don't understand that 5 calories is a dab of mustard. It is nothing.
Right.
It's
It is
tiny.
That's
nothing.
what I mean by when people look at the serving size and go, oh, it's 0 calories, or that there was that funny guy that he was weighing his potato chips and he was weighing them and they were 0. He would weigh one and eat it 0.
Yeah.
0. So he was like, oh, 0 calories because they each weigh 0. But
Oh,
that's what
And
happens with
also,
Golden Farms and the artificial sweetened stuff.
and the way the label laws work too, if it's like under 5 calories for a serving, you don't have to, you could put it 0 calories.
Right. Same
So
with the
if
the
it's
spray oils, the
yeah, if it's
0 calorie spray.
400 servings in a thing, it's like 3.5 calories per serving
Yeah.
or 4.
I
It's not 0.
And like, listen, your body is freaking weird when it's shredded. Your body, that prep was probably like dying for more mustard. Like, give me all the mustard. I'll eat mustard on my eggs, mustard on my
Anything.
chicken, any. So then, yeah, you're literally just going through a bottle of mustard a day.
It's a lot.
I
It's a
will
lot of mustard.
forever always think of you, Evan, when I am consuming mustard because I remember you told that story months ago on a podcast episode. I think I even had a client who referenced it in her check-in. She's like, yeah, kind of realized maybe I should taper down the mustard after listening to Evan. So I'm always going to
It's a lot.
associate it when I use my mustard. So,
Yeah.
do you have any other questions you want to bring up before I go through more of mine, Evan?
Yeah, I got one more that I thought was a pretty good one. It wasn't the question, it was more of like a comment talking about some things we had brought up in the past. And she said I mentioned it passively, but I thought it was interesting. I said, the goal for prep, right? And the goal of getting someone in a good place to start prep is to where you can have food at a high spot and cardio at a low spot and body composition in a good area with that. And she wanted me to kind of expand a little bit more on that. And I just thought that could be a really helpful thing for most people. Because I know we all get a lot of people that come to us like right before a prep, right? And they're like, hey, I'm ready to start a prep.
Mhm.
Um, there is a marketable difference between people I work with for 3, 4, 5, 6 months before we start a prep compared to someone that just comes into prep. There's a girl that I just started prep with, and she's been with me now for 5 months leading into it. And the reason she did is she saw one of my other clients do a recomp going into the show and how much better of a spot she was. And now this girl, I'm gonna make a post about her probably tomorrow. Her body composition is remarkably different than where it was. She's the exact same weight, the exact same body weight, but her body composition is completely different. Her food is high, her cardio is low, and going into prep, everything is going to be so much easier with that.
Absolutely. I 100% agree because I've had both situations. I think we all have where, you'll have a client who wants to start a prep, and, you've never worked with them. And on paper, it looks like everything is in a good spot, and maybe it is, but I do agree with you, Evan. I think if like working with somebody for months before starting a prep or, however long it is, there's a big difference just in how their body responds, how they look. And also, I think there's a lot to be said for you're learning the client's body before starting prep. The client is also learning you as a coach and how you work. So then by the time prep starts, there's really no guessing that goes into it. You guys know each other well, and it's ideally smooth sailing from there.
Yeah, this is probably the most important aspect of coaching competitors for multiple seasons is setting them up for the next season. We talked a couple weeks ago on our like, bad coaching practices. One of the things that I've come to realize is like when I get a competitor that reaches out to me and they've been put through the ringer with a terrible approach, low calorie, high cardio, drug protocols, that person needs a year or two off, right? That person cannot then go back into prep within a year or two, or sometimes longer. Whereas one of my clients, if they were to leave me at any given point, they're going to be healthy. They're going to be in a great spot and able to prep within another year, right? Because my goal is always to get their calories up to off-season numbers before our season ends, have them going into their improvement season with food high, cardio minimal, and a great body composition, right? So I can post dozens and probably hundreds of examples of this over the last couple of years. I'll talk about just Ariana because we're just now starting prep, because I think it does help to give some actual calorie weight numbers when you're
It
talking
does.
about this. Off-season calories for me, if you've got more than 10, 15 pounds of body fat to lose, your calories need to be 15 times your body weight or more, right? So, that's just a rough estimate on numbers. You want to be in that range somewhere. If you're starting prep at 10 times your body weight in calories, meaning if you're 120 pounds and you're starting prep at 1,200 calories, that's going to be a problem, especially if you got 20, 15 pounds to lose, right? So that's kind of some of the areas that I look at. Carbohydrates need to be considerably higher than your body weight. Again, same person, 120 pounds. If they're starting prep at 120 carbs, we're going to run into some problems pretty early on, right? Cardio. If you're doing more than lifestyle cardio before you start a prep, like if you're maintaining your weight at 60 minutes of cardio to start prep, unless you're already 4 or 5 pounds above stage weight, we're going to struggle, right? And these are obviously case by case basis, but I've just really come to really push the envelope with, getting the carbs up nice and high. Let's talk about Brittany Schulman. She just did a prep with me 2 years ago when she got a pro card. This year she got one show, got Olympia qualified. I've got her between 200 and 300 carbs right now, 60 and 70 fat. She's within 7-8 pounds of stage weight. So our next prep is going to go smooth, right? Ariana this year, she came to me last year pretty low on calories. She was about over 140 pounds. We ended up competing in the mid 120s. Luckily, she's just an anomaly. But what is exciting for me right now is we're just getting ready to start prep for Pittsburgh Pro. She's probably 6 or 7 pounds leaner than she was last year, eating considerably more food, right? So we're going to have a completely different response this year to prep. So it's just the job is, you can't hold anyone to any other athlete's standard, but their standard can progress, right? They can each prep add a little muscle, metabolically get a little bit better. So each prep you're starting in a better position. That's kind of my philosophy on it.
And that's something else I really wanted to touch on there, Paul, was if you have a good amount of muscle on your physique already, don't be afraid to stay leaner. Don't be afraid of that either. Please don't be afraid of that. Bikini standard is not, you are not so inside out peeled that a few pounds above that is not unhealthy. It's not. And I hear a lot of people say it's unhealthy. I'll see, and I'll be brutally honest here. I see girls that are, 8, 10 pounds above what their probably stage weight should be. And they'll post, it's not healthy to be at this body weight year round. I'm like, oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. You're probably healthier here than you were before you started prep at this
Yeah,
rate.
it's definitely healthy, if you're having your cycle, if you're eating a good amount of food and you feel good in the gym. Like that's, yeah, and that's one thing I'll say is like, my competitors stay very nice and lean in the off season. I do not push the they have to gain weight, mantra. Everyone's going to be a little bit different in that regard as far as like what they need to feel healthy. But I would rather stay on the slightly leaner side while growing than have to lose 20 pounds every time you prep. That gets exhausting.
Hard. It
Yeah,
gets exhausting.
I think too that's usually how I would say most female like bikini competitors what they prefer from a psychological standpoint, right? Because what happens is as a coach, if you're pushing too much weight gain to the point where somebody just they feel awful, they're, sluggish, they feel heavy, they're probably going to start, resenting going to the gym because they have to look at themselves in the mirror. It's like there's a lot of psychological distress that can cause too. So I agree. I think keeping somebody a little bit leaner, as long as they're feeling good, they're eating good, they have their cycle, the internal things are in check. I think that's usually the best way to go
Their
about it.
behavior has to match their goals.
Yep.
The frustrating thing is like someone will say like, "Hey coach, I want to stay a little bit leaner." Then on their check-in, they'll say, "Hey coach, I'm up 3 pounds this week. I didn't really feel like tracking." And I go, "Okay, then we have to change your goal. You
Yep.
cannot tell me your goal is this and then your behavior doesn't match it. Is your goal to have a little bit of freedom in life? I'm on board with that. But I can't coach you if you're telling me one thing but your actions are doing something else." So yeah, I just you got to make sure that they're doing what's best for them. And if they're not matching, if they say they want to add muscle but they're afraid to eat, likewise, that's another problem. Okay, hey coach, I'll be like, well, you dropped a half a pound this week but you're not letting me add food. Okay, so remember, the scale has to go up for you to add muscle. Like, you cannot weigh the same every show. And be the same body fat. You have to allow the scale to go up. Are you attached to this number? I said, "How are your clothes fitting?" Oh yeah, you know what? You're right. I said, okay, well, let's just add some food this week. Okay. And let's just so yeah, if they say they want to add muscle, they have to be willing to allow the scale to go up, even if it's gradually. And likewise, if they say they want to stay leaner, they have to be more diligent with their approach. And so just making sure that their goals match their actions.
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so I have a good question, and I think part of this I really want to actually touch on. Somebody said, okay, my coach is forgetful, says she will send a plan and forgets, doesn't make adjustments. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that, especially the last part, the whole she doesn't make adjustments, because I do think that this isn't always a bad thing, right? I think sometimes clients think every week something needs to change for your plan to be deemed as a good plan, right? But I mean, there's been many times in my plan where like Paul, like we don't change anything, but we don't need to, right? Because progress is happening. So I think you have to realize as a client, it's okay if, even if it's been several weeks and nothing has changed, if you're progressing, then why do things need, like, why should they have changed, right? So I don't think that just because a coach is not changing your protocol means they're a bad coach. Now, I mean, it would be different if, let's say, you weren't progressing, you had brought up some concerns, and they still weren't changing anything, right? But I do think it's important to know that you don't have to have changes every week to still be seeing progress.
No,
That's probably
100%.
overcoaching is probably one of the most common things I see.
Yeah.
And it's it, if someone is consistent and they're good and they're checking those boxes, I typically make far less changes than people that don't. And people that don't, it's because I'm trying to figure out what they can be consistent with and what they can stick to and trying to meet them in the middle with that. And that can be difficult. That can be difficult. That's where a lot of conversations I have with people is like, are you coachable or not coachable? Right. On that sort of thing. But also too, like as a coach, am I flexible with my clients too? It's a give and take when it comes to this sort of thing. And the more structured someone is, the longer they've been in this sport, honestly, the less changes that we have to make with it. But newer people, sometimes that can be a little bit more difficult. And people that have busier schedules, sometimes that can be a little bit more difficult, especially if people have jobs that involve socializing. And again, it all depends. And that's where we have conversations on if if their actions can match what their goal is. And in some cases, that goal just needs to be modified a little bit or changed or pushed back to be able to get there at that fashion. We can still get there. It just may be not in the time frame that they want.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's see what else okay, so I did get a couple questions. Um, well, this is another kind of coach related question that may be good for us to answer as coaches. How to be open with your coach if you feel like they aren't being or they aren't meeting your expectations or being super responsive. So, how to be open with your coach.
Blunt, just say it. Like, I think if you fear saying something to your coach, that's not good. Like, you shouldn't be worried. I've definitely had competitors come to me and say, "Hey coach, like I've just noticed like your responses are shorter or this. Can you tell me why?" And honestly, sometimes it's been very eye-opening for me. I realize a lack in my um mindset or whatever, but also I've been able to say to somebody, "Well, I kind of give you the energy you give me, and I've noticed that your updates, a lot of information is missing, and I felt you've been detached. You only update me every other week." Like, so maybe it goes both ways because I tend to match the energy that I get. And if I notice somebody's being a little bit reluctant with their updates or standoffish or whatever, I start to go, okay, they're checking out. I'll check out a little bit, right? So for better or worse, I'm a human being too, but there's definitely been times, and honestly, so our video replies that we do to our clients now, that was the result of, I'll never forget it. I was at North Americans and I was sitting with, I had like 15 girls at a table. We were just sitting there talking after prejudging. And one of the girls jokingly said, "I can never tell if you're mad at me." And I was like, "What?" And she's like, and then all the girls, yeah, yeah. Are you mad at us when you check our emails? And I was like, why would I be mad at you? And they're like, "Well, because your emails are just so direct." And I was like, "Give me an example." And they're like, "Okay, so I send you an update and you say, okay, this week we're going to drop your carbs to this. I'm going to bump your cardio to this, we're this many weeks out. Let's have a great week." Right. Well, to me, that's a very thorough response. I'm adjusting the plan as needed. They're reading between the lines because they're women. And I don't think like that. So I had to learn, okay, how can I get my point across to my athletes without making them think I'm mad at me? Videos. It's way different when they can hear your voice and you're like, "Hey, Telby, great job this week. Really happy, but we are 10 weeks out. It's time to make sure we're progressing. So I'm adjusting your calories. I'm not mad at you." No,
No, I think, and I love the video check-ins. I mean, I look forward to getting them back every week, and I have clients that tell me the same thing. They're like, "Oh, I really look forward to the videos. They're just more personable." And for clients that like to learn too, I think they're really helpful in that
yeah,
case.
when they put a question in there that I can answer, like I had a girl, I just sent her, it's our first peak week together, and she sent back like 10 questions on a full document, right? I literally just pulled it up, boom, boom. I just went question. That's something that, a couple of years ago, I would have had to type out a response and it probably would have
Mhm.
seemed a little bit more impersonal. Now she's got she can replay that as much as she wants if she has a question.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And and it's easy to say because I always try to come off as compassionate. I always try to come off as motivating. I try to come off also that was direct when it needs to be with that. But Paul, I've had the same thing where I've had some clients be like, "Well, I just didn't want to tell you because I didn't want to let you down, or I didn't want to, um, I didn't want to do this or didn't want to do that. And I kind of scratched my head because I'm like, I don't know why you would think like that, because I do everything I can to make sure you feel comfortable. I'm open, that you can come to me with these sort of things.
Yeah.
So for anyone out there that has that issue, and there's a lot of people that do, because I have a lot of DMs from people that have coaches asking questions. When I'm like, my response is, you should ask your coach that question. They're like, well, I don't feel comfortable. I'm like, okay, then have a conversation with your coach about why you don't feel comfortable asking him questions. Because there's a bunch of different ways to kind of go about that. It is something I feel like, you should have a conversation with the coach, and you could tell a lot about the coach as a person based on how they respond to that as well.
Bingo.
100%, 100%. And that all comes down to, we talk about it before, like when you start coaching someone, it's a conversation. I want to have a conversation with them before we start working together. Cause I will say to them, you can never make me mad. You can never upset me. You can never bother me. If I don't want to be bothered, I won't be on my email or on my phone.
Mhm.
And the only thing you can really do to kind of disappoint me is just ignore me or just skip check-ins and wait for the perfect week to check in. Like, let me be a part of the process. That's really the only way we might run into an issue.
Yeah, no, that's always my exact same answer. I think the only thing that really disappoints me is lack of check-ins or just that lack of communication. Here's a quick question that somebody asked. What are our thoughts on waist trainers and when should an athlete use them, if at all?
24/7, all
Use,
the time. Wear them to sleep, shower, bathe, wear them to the
actually, we
store.
have a contract that you're required to wear them from the day prep starts until you get on stage nonstop.
You have to wear one under your clothes and on top of it too. It has to be double.
Actually, just so we're clear, that is a joke, but that I've seen that before with some coaching teams. No, I don't believe there's any value at all to a waist trainer other than if it makes you feel good, wear it. If you like it, wear it. If you want to wear it so you sweat a little extra on your core, so your abs look good for 8 minutes after cardio, wear it. But it's not going to change your structure. It's certainly not going to change your body. Dieting, training, cardio, that's what's going to change your physique. So yeah.
I think it can help with waist control. People don't have good waist control. I think it can help with that. People that, um, especially, I have seen it be helpful for after like mothers have had children and kind of lose a little bit of their stomach control. Sometimes that can help them learn how to be able to control that a little bit better. But like anything, it's a trainer, right? It's to train you how to control your waist. That's what it is. It's not a waist reshaper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the problem I have with it is like, oh, I need a smaller waist. Well, pick better parents. Like you're not.
No.
I think so two thoughts on this. I think that kind of I agree with what you said, Evan. It can kind of help for some people who just really lack core control to work on that, that better core control that can transpire into their posing. But it may also help too with posture. If you're somebody who sits at a desk and like you slouch, it can help a little bit with your posture. But I also think another point to bring up about the waist trainers is a lot of times the people that you see on social media promoting waist trainers are like sponsored by the brand or they have an affiliate code they're making commission, right? So you kind of got to read between the lines there, so if somebody's promoting a waist trainer, like a top level athlete, because there are some that do this, they'll promote a waist trainer and they'll talk about how it got their waist snatched, but they're also promoting a discount code along with it. So then you have to know, okay, they're probably making commission, maybe they're sponsored by the company. So is the waist trainer really what made their waist snatched? Probably not. I mean, I don't think there's a huge pro to them, but I also don't think there's a huge con. If you want to wear one. I don't like wearing one though. I've tried it. When I'm training, so I don't mind wearing one if I'm just like around the house. But training wise, I don't like wearing them because I find that it's just really uncomfortable and I don't know, it's hard. When I'm just bending down to like grab weights, I feel like it's just
Yeah.
really sturdy and just really uncomfortable. So I hate wearing them when I train. I never wear them when I train. If anything, I may wear a weightlifting belt if I need a little bit of extra back support when I train, but I don't wear waist trainers when I train, nor do I have my clients.
I don't know how someone can get a good workout wearing one. I have no earthly idea how that can even be a thing.
I
Like I
don't
don't,
like,
because if you have a waist trainer on and it's good and tight, it's hard to breathe.
yeah.
And how are you
Well, and you
supposed to
can
train when you
actually
can't
start
breathe?
to atrophy some of the muscles that allow you to brace, leading to back injuries. So you
Yeah.
do have to be careful with that too.
One thing I have seen females use it for that I think it helped a little bit with the psyche, and it kind of piggybacks off the weight gain in the off season. If it makes them feel more comfortable to wear something to kind of pull their waist in and close so they feel a little bit more comfortable and confident in themselves, sure, rock and roll and do
Yeah,
that.
I agree with that too. If you feel good in it and you like the way you look and feel, it can be a piece of gym equipment that just gets you excited to go in the gym. I've even seen guys, do that just so they look really cool with their shirt tucked in, right? Like, so
Mhm.
I don't,
I've
yeah,
never
but
seen that before. Interesting.
yeah, no, the problem is, like you said, most of the time that you hear about somebody touting the benefits of it, there is a link to buy one right there, which doesn't automatically make things bad, but all the research, all the science, everything I've seen suggests that there is not really any value. However, placebo matters. If you believe it's helping you, put the damn thing on. Don't listen to other people. Yeah.
Yeah, I know some waist training companies will even market as like, oh, it helps you to not overeat as much because you're a little bit more constricted. So I feel like that's kind of I don't like that, but
So it's a laparoscopic band on the outside of your.
I don't know. It's just
You don't want to
yeah.
eat because when you eat, because I have worn it before, when you eat, it is hard to wear it after because if you eat any volume of food, your stomach will expand, and that makes it super uncomfortable. Because these waist
Yeah.
trainers, if you wear them the way you're supposed to wear, they are super tight.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I remember the first time, I won a giveaway for one, like this was probably 4 years ago. I remember getting it in the mail, and the size that I got was like the size I was supposed to get based off of my measurements. And I remember putting it on or trying to put it on. I was like, how the hell do people fit in these? Like it was awful. Like it was so tight. I mean, they stretch over time, but yeah, I don't believe in wearing them so tightly to the point where you're like, you can barely breathe. I think
And
that's
there's a big difference between like one of the neoprene ones that are like sweat me skinnies and then an actual one with like clips and then really tightens around. They're not the same,
uh,
but they are what they
yeah.
are.
Yeah. All right. So kind of coming to I know we've been on here for a bit, but I do have this was two different questions, but they're kind of the same one. Some people want to know how to know what type of cardio is best during prep or just for you in general. And what cardio furthermore can cause like more inflammation than other cardio. And I think this is important to talk about.
Yeah, this is
Uh,
kind of one of the things I'm going over in my presentation about the stimulus to fatigue ratio with that. And it goes with training and it goes with cardio too. Something like the Stairmaster, your heart rate's going to get up higher. You're probably going to burn more calories doing it, and you're probably going to burn it much quicker than walking on a treadmill at a small incline at a slow pace for an hour and a half. You probably are going to do that. But your body is going to feel beat up, especially over time. Especially over time. There's a time and a place for everything, but knowing where to put those in your program is important. I tell all my athletes when they put on their sheet, they're doing Stairmaster. I'm like, get off the damn Stairmaster in the off season, please. Of all things, why would you want to do that? We don't want to tax your legs and glutes while we're trying to grow them. That doesn't make any sense. Let's not do that. I'd rather keep your food down just a little bit lower and get your steps up higher, then do something like Stairmaster in the off season with that. Also, too, people that have injuries, some things need to be done. Like if your back is hurting, maybe the recumbent bike is a fine way to do cardio. It really, really is. And if you get on there and you pedal on there, you will get some work done. Don't be afraid to do that. But again, it's person dependent, goal dependent. But finding something that doesn't tax your body while still getting the results based on the time frame that you have available, because some of us don't have time to walk 2 hours a day, right? It'd be awesome if we did, and that's not always possible. For those people that need to kind of get it out of the way quicker and get those calories out, maybe Stairmaster for a shorter stint gets the job done too.
Yep. I'm a firm believer in the intensity should be in your weight training sessions, and the cardio should be, the burning the most calories you can without impacting your training. So that's going to look different. Now, I will say this, I only use walking in my preps now. And when people hear that, they go, "Oh, walking." Listen, you cannot do my walk that I do at the end of prep right now. None of you can. If you think you can walk for an hour on an incline at a good speed and you haven't been doing it, I'm sorry. Those sessions I can burn 500-600 calories in an hour, but I'm basically like, walking at 3.5 with an incline of 7 or 8. And I couldn't do it right now. I could not, but it's like a progressive thing. Throughout prep, I'll actually just get more adapted to walking, so my speed and my inclines pick up. Right now in the off season, I'm walking for 30 minutes, just at 3 miles an hour, 3 incline. I get a nice little sweat going. My digestion improves. I feel good, but I have found that the lower you can create the stress through the cardio, the better that's going to impact the rest of the body throughout prep. There are times, hey, we're backs against the wall, calories are already low. Let's just get on the stairs. It works. It's just going to strip the fat away from you pretty quickly, but it's also going to be inflammatory. It's also, the one thing that people look at when they look at cardio is they go, man, I did that 1 hour cardio and I burned more calories. Okay. But the other 23 hours of the day matter. And what research has shown is that something like high intensity cardio, which burns more calories in that hour, people burn less calories throughout the rest of the day because they're so exhausted. So their non-exercise activity drops. They start conserving energy. So was it beneficial to do HIIT cardio when you're just laying around the rest of the day? Or would you have been better off just taking a couple walks throughout the day and feeling like a human being? I typically find that the latter is better. The more non-exercisey activity you can do throughout the day is better. But this is prep and we have a narrowing focus. And so as the intensity of the cardio needs to go up and calories need to come down, we'll use that. But for my purposes, I fight with people that want to do HIIT. I even fight with people that want to do like marathon or jogging in prep. That's very damaging and hard to recover from. Stairs, I at least can get on board with. But it is going to eat up a little bit of muscle for most people that don't have like great lower body genetics. So you got to be careful with that, but it does burn some damn calories. That's for sure.
Burn
Yeah.
out your
Yeah.
CNS if you do it too much too, though. So
Yeah.
it's trying to balance both of those. I think the stairs it's a great tool, but it is a tool, right? I would love it if people could just walk, 25,000 steps a day and never touch a piece of cardio equipment. That would be awesome.
Yeah, and I think too, there's when you're doing that hit cardio, if you are, I mean, there's not only what you just said, Paul, about how the other 23 hours out of the day you're barely moving, but there's a little bit of that like anxiety too that sometimes you get if you do it. I mean, I know I don't really want to say this is anxiety, but like at the end of prep, I don't use my Peloton bike as much, mainly for inflammation purposes. But I just when I get on there, I know it's going to be a little bit harder. So sometimes if I know I have a lot of cardio and I'm gonna if I were to approach it, do it on my bike, I get a little bit of like that anxiety or that like, just I don't know, you kind of get nervous because you know it's gonna be hard, right? So I think there's a little bit of that anxiety that comes too if you're gonna do HIIT. But yeah, I think low impact steady state is typically the way to go. But there are some cases where some people don't have time to spend an hour plus on a piece of machinery. So in those case by case scenarios, we may have to be a little bit more flexible. I think I don't like the elliptical as far as I don't think it's fun. I hate it. It's boring, but I do find that the elliptical can be like a lower resistance on the elliptical can be another good one for keeping inflammation low in a fat loss phase or prep
Mhm.
too.
Yeah, and the elliptical can be great if you have any type of injury that makes walking difficult because it's circular in motion. So if you have any type of foot injury, so yeah, listen, I've had people do cardio with their arms. They've done the ropes with their arms. So like there's the hand bikes. There's more than ways. Movement is movement. So
Forget about
I
the hand weights.
I always tell people test it out. I did one entire prep on the recumbent bike. I just liked sitting down and pedaling. Now I just like walking. So
Yeah, yep. Um, any other questions that you guys got that you wanted to talk about or any other topics?
let me see. I had one that I thought was a relative topic for the podcast. Where did she go?
Oh, I guess I have one really quickly. I kind of think this is funny. Well, not funny, but we could answer it. Best way to make it through a mental breakdown during prep. You guys have any words of insight? Because I know whenever I get asked this question, I think my best answer is, and I think we all know this if we've prepped before, your emotions are so up and down. You could have one day where you feel like the world is ending and literally wake up the next day and feel like it's the best day ever. So I always say don't feed too much into your emotions day to day, knowing that like, they can just go up and down. And really, like the quote, take it one day at a time has always really helped me in prep.
I would say tomorrow's a new day. You'll
Yep.
probably feel better tomorrow.
Yep. Yep. Take some deep breaths, do that physiological sigh, take some deep breaths, get a good night's sleep, and your day will probably be the complete opposite in a good way the next day.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the process of dieting down and doing multiple shows, you start to realize that when you get lean, your emotions become more up and down. I think, I tell my wife all the time, it's the only time I can relate to her, and her emotional states going up and down throughout a normal day is when I'm stage lean, because I will literally be ecstatic one minute, the grumpy the next, and I'm like, oh, this is what it feels like for my wife on a daily basis, right? Whereas like now I'm always in the same mood. I'm always in a good mood. Like the world could be ending and I'm like, whatever, but like at the end of prep, you know, things can get thrown off a little bit easier. But I think that's hormonally, your triggers are a little bit different when you have low body fat, or when you're dealing with the influx of hormones that women get. So maybe we're dealing with that. So if you're having a bad moment or a bad day, just realize it's a part of the process. And when you think of it that way, it actually becomes like, I don't want to say enjoyable, but you just go, okay, that's where we're at in this prep. Like there's been like, don't laugh. You guys are going to laugh. I hear you laughing now. There's been times at the end of preps where I've literally been on the treadmill and I've cried. And it was like I was crying out of like pride. I was like, man, I finished this prep. It's always like in peak week or at the end of the prep. And then I'm just like crying. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you, dude? Like, what does it matter with you? But then I'm like, it's just emotional. Like you realize you've done something, and it's like, okay. But I wouldn't normally have that like response, but you feel things just a little bit deeper when you're low body fat.
You
No,
do.
you do for sure. I mean, there's typically 1 or 2 points in every prep I've ever had where I question, why am I doing this? Right.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's most people. That is most, even the most high level Olympians. I'm talking open bodybuilding, 1, 2, 3, and everyone goes through this where you sit there and be like, what am I doing? I mean, there's times I'll sit down and try to put my shoes on to go get my steps in or go finish the last bit of cardio for the day. And there's been times I've like just broke down into tears while trying to tie my shoes.
Yeah.
Um, and what's funny is next day, I'm like, why was it even like that? Right.
Oh,
It's it
how us.
always passes.
Yeah, it's crazy how you could literally be having one day where you think the world is ending, or you're just questioning, should I even prep? Am I even cut out for this? And then the next day you wake up and you're like what, like all that changes, you got a good night's sleep and it's a new day, right? And the way I always look at it too is those really really hard days typically give you so much more gratitude for a normal day. When you'd wake up normally on a normal day and just kind of be like like normally if you've had a really bad day, you wake up the next day and you feel normal, you're like, oh my god, this is amazing. You know what I mean? So it just gives you a lot more gratitude for those normal days and those good days.
It's like
Yeah.
when you've been really sick for a while, right? And then you feel better. And then there's that day where you just feel like $1,000,000 for the first time, and you're like, oh my gosh, how do I not enjoy life every day?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Speaking of
absolutely,
that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you
That
find that?
that's just prep experience. And the first prep I did, I remember thinking, this is way more mentally tough than it is physically for me. I can, if you grew up playing sports and being coached and being pushed by different people, the physical part of cardio and diet and training, like I hate to sound like, if that's tough for you, I'm sorry, but that's the easy part for me. That's going to
Yeah.
the gym and not feeling strong, seeing the scale go down, the odd person like walks by you that hasn't seen you in a while and they go, oh, you look a little skinnier. Like those moments are way harder for me in prep than, oh, I only get 150 carbs today. Gives a crap. That's the easy part. The mental struggle for me, the first prep was literally just like feeling like I don't look like a bodybuilder, except for those few moments after I work out and I go in the locker room. I put my clothes back on and no one even knows I work out anymore, but I look good enough to win a show, but I look terrible in my clothes. So like that mental struggle. So if that's what you're having a breakdown about, I'm sure we all go through that. I mean, we all do.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost not normal if you don't at least go
I
through.
don't think Andrew Jacked does, because I saw that man in Dallas last year and Evan was there with me. And you would have swore he wasn't in shape. There's no way a man can be that big and that low body fat with their clothes on. He like looked like he wasn't even dieted. He's massive.
He's a big man.
Yeah. Like some bodybuilders, like you see them when they're dieted down and you go, oh, I can see it. He was walking around and I'm like, there's no way he's in shape. Nope, he's in shape. He was freaking peeled. So it's
Yep.
like there are those mutants on the world, but very few. But I'm sure even him, he's, he's probably down 30, 40 pounds. He's probably
Oh,
for him
yeah.
feeling, yeah, but yeah.
I think some people just do a better job at like putting on that face, and they do a little bit
Yeah.
better of a job of coming across as always being, happy go lucky, but I think they still struggle too. They just do a better job at like kind of not showing it.
Oh yeah.
They
I mean,
do.
that's the beauty of Instagram. It's a highlight reel. You
Right.
don't always show your ups and downs, and that's honestly, if you can be a competitor that talks about that stuff, it can be really helpful to talk about that. Finding people that can kind of understand what you're going through and go, yes, that's a very normal thing. You go, oh, cool. Okay. I'm not crazy. I can do this thing. So yeah. Yeah. Very good. All right. I think we should wrap it up there. It's been about 1 hour.
I think we've been on for a good amount of time, and I know this will come out the Monday after Command the Stage, and I think Paul and I are both planning on doing YouTube content for the event, right? So,
Oh, I have George filming all my video. I also have Kelby coming to take photographs. So we'll have double whammy on the social.
yeah, if you
Oh.
can't make it and you're having FOMO, watch our footage, and you'll maybe you'll want to come next year.
Yeah. I'm considering Twitch streaming all of the presentations and just, posting. So yeah, never done Twitch, but I've been listening to Gary Vee and he's like, streaming is the new thing. So I might start trying it. I might even start streaming our podcasts just while we're doing them,
That's
type of thing.
Yeah,
interesting.
could
I'm
do.
looking at that too, because I've heard of Twitch. I've just never really looked into it. I've done more of like the lives on Instagram, or I've never dabbled with YouTube lives, which that's something maybe in the future we could do for our
I've done
podcast.
some YouTube lives and had good results. We did me
Okay.
and Stephen did a YouTube presentation a couple years ago, got great views, great down, and the nice thing is once it's done being live, it just goes into your library.
Mhm.
The problem is like getting the software set up. We all have to be in the same studio type of thing.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I guess I will see you guys here in 2 days.
Yeah.
days.
Thursday night.
Yes. Awesome. All right. Well, share
Okay.
this episode, tag us if you enjoy it, and we will see you guys in the next one.
Leave a review or Lexi will kick your ass.
Yes, she will.
All right. Later, guys.
Appreciate it.